What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets, and give you guys a very, very important update about President Trump's tariffs, because he is now threatening high tariffs on Canada, and that could be very impactful. But now the market has a more negative effect right now, and we're going to see if we could hold support or not. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. Anyways, SPY had a bearish divergence we were talking about yesterday, and then there was also a bearish divergence with the QQQ as SPY was making new all-time highs, but the QQQ came kind of short yesterday. And now we're seeing the market reject after what President Trump has said. Now, we haven't lost key support yet to turn bearish. We're not really in bearish territory yet. And we have to see if we enter bearish territory or not, given the current trend. So what's going on? Why is the market dipping like this? Let's go over President Trump's tariffs and what just happened. There's huge news that just came out that President Trump is saying that he wants to impose a 35% tariff on all Canadian goods from August 1st. He's also threatening a blanket of a 15 to 20% tariffs on most other countries, which is some very, very big news. So what's going on right now? We're seeing the same thing that's going on because now Canada is threatening to do the same thing to the US if we continue to raise our tariffs. So they're threatening retaliatory tariffs against the US. We just had Mark Carney say this. He's talking about how throughout the current trade negotiations with the US, they're going to once again continue to defend their workers. And with what's going on right now, they want Canada to be very strong. And like I said before, they're going to continue to negotiate, but simultaneously they are going to threaten reciprocal tariffs against the US. At least that's from their perspective. If we impose 35% tariffs on them, they're threatening that they may do the same thing to us. And that's going to have a big effect on trade, because the reason why this is so impactful compared to like other countries like Japan, South Korea, and etc., right? Japan and South Korea only make like 4% of our trade, whereas Canada makes about 14% of it, at least as of for 2024. Canada is one of our largest trade partners. We have about $600 billion worth of trade between the US and Canada, and a 35% tariff on Canada will be very, very impactful for a lot of different goods, from lumber, and the list goes on. Keep in mind that if Canada starts imposing tariffs back on the US, it's going to have a big effect on costs. That's what they're saying so far. There's been some talk about how the prices of like coffee, shoes, appliances, and etc. could start going up. Lots of our appliances do come from Canada too. And then, when you're seeing high tariffs, such as the ones on like Japan and South Korea, the high 50% tariffs on Brazil that President Trump is threatening, and then you have about 35% tariffs on Canada, and the list goes on, right? You have a lot more tariffs ranging from 20 to 40%. It's going to have a big effect on inflation and the markets, possibly. Today is Friday. We just have the WASDE report, which is important for agricultural numbers. There's nothing else too significant coming out. And then we have Jamie Dimon, who is saying that the markets are too complacent about the risk of more rate hikes. He's saying this because he's concerned that we're going to see a lot more inflation, and we're just getting started with the tariffs, right? The tariffs are being threatened right now, right? President Trump delayed them for a good while, and now if he does truly impose them, he said that he's not going to back down on August 1st. That's going to be the official date. Countries are scrambling to negotiate deals, but if we don't get enough deals, that could have a big effect on things. For those who are curious about what the effect is going to be, there was a study done by Yale University and found some of the effects of President Trump's tariffs. Now, the report basically includes his letters from July 7th and July 9th. It does not include the Canadian tariffs that just came out, but despite that, there are some big effects that it's essentially talking about. So the first thing it basically mentioned is that there's going to be a risk of higher prices. They did kind of like go over that very, very slightly. And then they talked about how, with these higher prices, it could cost Americans an average of about $2,400 per year. And keep in mind, I'm going to go over the good and bad effects. I'm not just going to go over bad things, just bear with me. They're also saying that a lot of prices could be going up, from shoe prices going up as high as 39%, and then apparel and a list of other things will likely see a lot of more upside in prices. Our GDP is going to be going down by about 0.4% because of the tariffs, not including the Canadian ones, so it could be even worse. Unemployment could rise as much as 0.4% by the end of 2025. And then they were saying some negative things about the tariffs as a result of the effects on GDP and prices. But the good news about the tariffs is that the tariffs will raise $2.6 trillion over 2026 to 2035. So that's some good news, but the question is, can that money be used to offset the pain to our GDP, to offset the pain we're about to experience if they are truly imposed by August 1st? That's going to be the big question, and we're going to see how it ends up going. So please keep that in mind. But once again, we do intend to be very, very unbiased when it comes to this. There's going to be good things that come from the tariffs and bad things. There will be a lot of revenue coming in, but then as it affects our economy, there's going to be some negative effects, and we're going to see if we could really offset the negative effects. But that's what President Trump is basically giving us, at least so far. So, anyways, let's then now get on with the other things. When it comes to essentially what's affecting us, this is making breaking news right now, and I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy. So let's focus on the charts. When you look at SPY, you basically have the support at 622. If this holds, we could try to bounce to 625. It's still possible we try to see a bounce. We need to hold 622 to do so. If we don't hold 622, we're going to be at risk of tipping to 619, then eventually 617 if those levels fail us. So please keep those levels in mind. There is a bearish divergence on here, so watch and see a test of 622. We got to hold this. If not, there's going to be a risk of us returning towards 619 to 617. We look a bit weaker right now. We are favoring the downwards direction a bit more, but we'll see just to be safe. You want to wait for confirmation and just see if we could hold support or not. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. Now, if you want to be bullish, you need to hold at least above 553. If it holds, we're looking for 555 to fill that gap. If 553 does not hold, we're looking for 552. And if it does not hold that support, we're looking for 548 or below, as we have a little bit of weakness on the QQQ compared to SPY. So please keep that in mind. That's what we're seeing, at least thus far. And that's going to be very, very key for how we end up moving, at least for the time being. For other tickers out there, we also have the IWM. The Russell is also showing some weakness. We're going to be likely testing 222. We need to get back above and hold above 222 to push for 225. If 222 fails us, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 219. So please keep those levels in mind. I think we dip a little bit to 222, and we're going to see if buyers defend or not. It is a Friday, so we'll have to wait and see. ES is in the middle. We need to get back above like 6,300 to see some kind of rebound move. If we can't hold above 6,300, I do see a test of 62.69. We're going to see if that holds. If 62.69 does not hold, there's going to be a risk of more downside towards 62.50. So please keep that in mind, especially as time goes on. But watch 6,300 to see if that breaks. If we can't hold above that, there's going to be a risk of 62.69. We're going to see if that holds. Otherwise, there's going to be that downside risk. On NQ, we're showing some weakness. I do think we're going to be retesting 22,864. We need to bounce off this to push higher. We got to hold 22,864. If we can't, there's going to be a risk of us dipping all the way down towards the 22,700s. So please be very careful. On Bitcoin, we need to hold above 118,000. If we don't, there's going to be a risk of 116,000 or below. On Tesla, we need to get back above essentially the 313 area for a rebound. Now, Tesla's not going to be as impacted by these tariffs, but if the whole market slows down, that could also be negative for Tesla. So if we're truly making lower highs here, lower high, and lower high, not the best of signs. I want to see us hold above 313 to bounce. If not, we're going to be at risk of returning to 304 to 303. And then we could bounce off that. We need to hold 303. If not, there's going to be a risk of more downside. So look for a test of, I would say, like 303 to 305, and we'll see if we bounce. If not, there's going to be a risk of downside. On Nvda, I think this is going to cause Nvda to dip towards 161. And we're going to see if this holds. If it holds, we could bounce. If not, there's going to be a risk of more downside. So keep that in mind. For Appl, look for a test of 210 to see if we bounce. If not, we could be dipping towards 208. For Coinbase, we're going to likely continue to dip a little bit. So we have resistance becoming support at 380. If we hold above 400, we're bullish. If we can't hold that, there's going to be a risk of the 380s, like 380 flat. Amazon's looking decent. We have resistance basically at this 224 area, and we have support at 222 and 219. So watch to see if 222 holds. If not, we could be dipping to 219. We're going to see if buyers defend. But I do anticipate a test of 222. And I think that Amazon may dip lower if that doesn't hold. So if it doesn't hold, we could be continuing to fall. On Meta, we're also dipping here. We're looking for basically 718. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping more. And if we break back above this 724 area, we're going to be turning bullish. My gut tells me we're making lower highs here, so I see a test of 718. And we're going to see if it holds there. If it doesn't, we dump more all the way down towards the next level is going to be around 711. So be very, very careful. Google is going to likely test 176. We got to bounce off that. If not, we could be dipping more. And then Microsoft needs to hold 499. If it doesn't, we're looking for 494. The VIX is starting to break out, but we need to see if it could break past 17.08. If it does, we have a gap to fill above. If it rejects, though, and loses like 16.25, there's going to be a dump to like the 15s. So we're going to see which way it ends up going. Could go either way, so please keep that in mind. Anyways, I am seeing some weakness on the charts, and there's going to be a risk of us losing 622 to dump a lot more. So you want to be very, very careful, at least nonetheless, if 622 fails us. So please be very, very mindful of that. We're going to see how these tariffs affect things, and the market's obviously reacting more because keep in mind Canada is one of the largest trade partners, and this is going to be affecting the US a lot more. So we'll see how it goes. Can we hold support or not? I'm going to be in the middle for now, but if we don't hold key support like 622 on SPY and 552-ish on the QQQ, and do expect some downside. Unfortunately, I just want to be very blunt about that. Anyways, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your guys' days, and peace out.